This episode is brought to you by the RVA Podcast Network. Find more information at rvapodcast.org.
We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such.
Are you serious? Like, we at season 7, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. Yeah, season 7. Magic number. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna go in depth with that, but yeah, this will be a very positive season. I don't know why and what's making me say that, but everything's changed. Everything is a lot different. I know the title you'll still see the podcast about sports and stuff, but yeah, I ain't gonna get no sports. I'm still, like I said, stuff is very fluctuating now. I found that the connection with things is to get people to talk, as well as me taking time to talk. So you'll notice it, especially when you hear the first few episodes of this season. But it's just about sitting down and just having good talk, good conversation. Pass the message. Y'all know they ain't going nowhere. If you know, you know. If you've been around for a while, you already know how we give it up. But just hang in there. The content's amazing. The moves are even more amazing. And just put yourself in the right headspace to get this information. So hope y'all enjoy. What's up, y'all? What's going on? Episode 363 of The Pass is here. I am your host, BT, and this is somewhat of an impromptu yet necessary episode. The reason I say that is because there's a lot that we need to discuss, and there's quite a bit that has been going on that I wanted to kind of put on the table. So I'm going to do something a little different because I know most of the time I'm always saying we're not talking sports. It's mostly stuff. But I actually have a brief basketball update, and then I have a couple other things. So give me one sec. So yeah, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna do two things. One, because no one's really talking about it, but it is being talked about. The controversial Lakers Celtics finishing failure of a call. We'll talk about that, as well as what we now have as our Super Bowl teams and a couple plays, and just kind of I'm gonna give my 2% overall view, because one, if y'all have been paying attention for the last, I guess you could say 21 weeks, I haven't talked much football, and that's just what it is. But yeah, so let's hop into it. One, it's interesting when referees make a mistake in basketball, and then they try to go about thinking they're resolving it in their own way, but they really aren't doing anything other than just saying we messed up. And this was evident in that game. There was a blatantly obvious foul on LeBron James. Now, let me be perfectly clear before I go too far into this and not even make this a topic. I am not turning this into LeBron should get every call, or always should be the superstar call. No, this one, you literally could see the photo of, like, the still shot of him being fouled was very evident and very clear. So what made that entire interaction so jarring and so heavy is, as soon as they missed the call, you see Patrick Beverley picking up the camera from one of the photographers, videographers, whatever, bringing it to the court and giving it to the referee, or showing it to the referee, like, look, here's the call. Like, this should be viewed. The thing that I have a question about, and I don't know if this has come up as a topic or not, but it's crossed my mind a couple times, was that play reviewable? Because if it was, then we really need to, like, look at it and understand, like, why didn't they try to review that play? Even down to, I guess it goes to New York, I'm not sure, but there's like a a hub or a station where they can go back and say, hey, we need to look at that call. And none of that was done with that play. So that was very jarring and very eye-opening. Like, they showed, even down to reactions, they showed LeBron, like, they showed it from the behind the bench of the Lakers and seeing his reaction. And like I said, he had every right to react the way he did, because they should have called it. They should have made the call as far as giving him the free throws. On the other side of it is, what if he misses the free throws? But we also can't project what would have happened before it happened based on what wasn't called. So all of that played into like an interesting ending to a basketball game, to say the least. So that's what I got on that. I'm not really talking too much otherwise. Like, I know I was thrown a funny question about the Houston Rockets and how do I feel about Jabari Smith, and I was like, I'm gonna be honest, I really don't know much about him as a Rockets fan, but you know, it is what it is. And I know I'm throwing it in as like just a minutia thought, but it's relevant because I will recommend to everyone, if you have not done so. And I usually, well, no, I ain't gonna say I don't. I'm making my goal to try to promote other podcasts, and there's a podcast called Run Your Race with Theo Pinson and AJ. I forgot his last name, but I will put that podcast link in the show notes. They had John Wall on as a guest, and I was glad that I was able to sit down and like watch the full video, because what I was doing, as the internet does, is they give you so many snippets of the show to the point where you're like, I pretty much watched the podcast. I just didn't watch it all in one sitting, but it was good to sit and watch it. And the biggest takeaway that I took from it, that I think is one of my biggest things, because I've noticed this with, I always talk about it with Kevin Garnett whenever he's a guest on a podcast or when he's hosting his podcast. I noticed it with, noticed it a few times with Steven Jackson. I've really noticed this with Stephen A. Smith. I've noticed it with Fred Taylor. I've noticed it with a couple people that I've had on my show. You have to be somewhat of a decent, if not solid storyteller to, one, either host a podcast, or two, be a guest on a podcast. Because if the story is compelling and maintains or keeps the attention of the listener, you're in, you won. And sometimes I don't think we understand how big of a deal that is, because there's some topics that, you know, if you're talking about it, it's like it's a topic, but then it just kind of falls to the wayside. Like Antonio Brown, I looked at a snippet that he was on for a podcast, and in the process of him talking, they went into CTE, and some part of his neurological thoughts were triggered by that whole conversation. And I think every time it comes about, it always comes back. So I don't know. I'm one of those people. It's tough to talk about CTE as someone who hasn't played football, but watching a lot of players who have played, it always is alarming to me, especially when playing at a high level. Speaking of CTE, speaking of football, we have our two teams for the Super Bowl. Kansas City will be playing Philadelphia at Arizona for Super Bowl 57. Had to write the exact number because, you know, they show the Roman numerals. I'm like, we ain't learned Roman numerals since, like, kids, and I hate to use the term kids today, but a lot of younger children don't have a clue how to read Roman numerals, which is very interesting to me, because especially when they reached, I remember Super Bowl 50 coming about, because that was when Carolina played Denver. And I think that was a turning point for Carolina, in my opinion, but that's another conversation for another day. But Super Bowl 50 was interesting because they didn't go with the L. They didn't go with the L for the Super Bowl number. They just went with the number 50, and I think it was like a more ceremonial and like a bigger deal for the NFL. I watched a fair amount of the Philly San Fran game. The big story was that pretty much like each of their quarterbacks, they were down almost like their fourth string quarterback. That's how bad it was. So the big question now with San Fran is going to be what they're looking like going into the new season, who's going to be the starting quarterback, how they're going to handle everything. Because the big question on the table, whether anybody wants to say it or not, is what's going to happen with Jimmy G. Is Jimmy G staying? Are they going to let him go? How that's going to look. Not related to the Super Bowl, but also a topic too that's come up. It looks like Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers might be severing ties. So interesting to see how that's going to all play out. But, you know, we'll see. We'll kind of keep our eyes open on that and see what happens. Like I said, not typically the topics I would talk about on the podcast, but I wanted to get into those. And then going to the AFC side, Kansas City, there was a controversial play at the end where Mahomes was running out of bounds, and as he was nearing out of bounds, he was pushed, which led to a roughing the passer call. And, you know, there's going to be big questions about whether that call should have been made, how that should have been handled. So we'll see how that all plays out. That's the most we're going to do with sports today. Might be the most we do with sports this year. If anything, the most sports will come back around when we hit like major championships. But I'm not looking, I'm sticking to my plan. I still intend to not be the sports based podcast. Like I said, I like to throw it in there once in a while as like a general topic and have it as a solid discussion. This week, I was able to listen to a podcast, and I gotta do a quick search up of it. But it was I want to say it's called 10% Better. And why I'm sharing this and why I'm talking about it, yeah, it's called 10% Happier is the name of the podcast. The specific episode that I listened to had Adam Grant on the show. And he was talking about perfectionism and procrastination. And I really can, it really made me think about a lot of things within internally and just overall. Because I believe I may have talked about it on the show before, but there was another podcast I listened to from the writer or the creator of gamification, and how we should, instead of being consumed by the many products we have, actually putting those things aside and focusing on what we need to focus on and getting into what we need to get into. So I personally value these type of podcasts or these type of conversations because it's the real world. It's what we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. But first thing that came up, of course, is perfectionism. As a creative, as a person who is big on designing, I will say I have battled with trying to design a lot of work due not even to being lazy. It has more to do with being battling myself on it being the perfect audio, the perfect video, the perfect design. And it's a very, and I'm gonna share this because this is probably gonna be a layer that's let down that I'm not even thinking about, but thinking about as I'm talking about it. When it comes to doing my podcast, when it comes to uploading videos on TikTok, when it comes to writing blogs, those things come so naturally to me of, okay, sit in front of the computer, in the podcast case, have a few topics outlined and just go. When it comes to TikTok, get in the car, hook the microphone up. As soon as it's connected, got an idea. This is what I want to talk about. Topic becomes reality. It happens every single time. Same with blogging. Most of my blogs are writing has been something that I've naturally just had a growing for from being a kid. But then we get into those other intricate designing factors, and that's the web design and the graphic design. And what makes those two so interesting is they have the potential, if not to be lucrative, and I'm running a business for those, Rely on Bot LLC. But when I sit in front of a blank canvas, or when I sit in front of a website and I'm trying to design something, either off of a template or through a profile, it becomes the most overbearing challenge that I've ever experienced, and it shouldn't be that way. I've already kind of made a commitment to it. I'll say it on the air. If, like I said, people will hear it. If you hear it, you hear it, but whatever. February will be the month of designing the page. I need to have my own web page set up for for Rely on Bot, because I've been using the Google page and it's still active, but I don't know what Google is going to do. They might decide one day, hey, we're shutting down and we're not going to be offering this website service or the Google business service or whatever. So I want to be ahead of that before it gets too out of control. But I say all of that to say, trying to fight for perfectionism in those two areas is what sometimes cripples me as a designer. And I know that's something I may not need to be sharing publicly, but it's something that I'm beginning to come to grips in, knowing like I have to stop putting things in front of what I need to do, since I know I have the ability to do whatever that thing is. And being aware of it is key as far as like the skill set, but the challenge becomes countering that skill set and or ability in knowing what you're capable of doing. Because we all know our capabilities, we know our worth, we know our value, but it's the challenge behind trying to make sure it's done to the best of your ability. The next part they talked about is, we hear the term procrastination, and it was he compared it and brought up a word or a verbiage called precrastination, which I had never heard of. But when it was explained, it makes a lot of sense. It kind of goes a little bit into Parkinson's law, a little bit, like a very little bit. But, as we talked about last week with Parkinson's law, basically, if you are giving someone 2 hours to work on something that should take 20, 30 minutes, they're going to spend the whole 2 hours to work through it, or they may do it near the end of the 2 hours. With precrastination, it's almost the exact opposite of that, where you're given that time frame and you knock it out. Like you have until the end of, like today's Monday, you have until the end of the week on Friday at midnight, or Saturday at midnight, whatever, to complete it. And you finish it like that Tuesday, which for a lot of people, it is resourceful and it is helpful to do that. So I don't want to say that it's a bad thing to do procrastination. It's just remembering after doing that and completing that task, and remembering the other tasks or the other things you need to work on. And that's something that I'm still coming to grips with, still learning, still adjusting to on a day-to-day basis. Not even gonna lie. I personally, from my personal experience, I will come clean in saying I am the professional procrastinator when it comes to things. If it's to that point of, all right, it's the last day or the last point. Matter of fact, I'll give an even more realistic story. When I had to move from where I previously lived, I didn't really start packing, like talking about it, until it was like a couple of days left. And I was like, all right, let me start getting stuff together. And by then it started to click like, all right, let's do it. We got to do it. And eventually everything was done. Everything was taken where it needed to be taken. There was like there were a couple things left over, but the last few things that were remaining was pretty much on okay, this all can just go, and I'm not looking to do anything with it. And that was just the end of it. So yeah, that was that portion of it in a nutshell. But finding that balance between procrastination and precrastination is key. And a lot of it does come back, which the guy broke down on the podcast, about the circadian rhythm. Because for some people, there are people who are daytime people. There are people who function better at night. Like, I think now, I used to constantly say, oh, I'm a night person. I'm like, at night, I can do a lot of things. Now my mindset is more like, okay, what can I do in the day, even while I'm doing the things that I routinely would do during my day, such as going to work, such as working on routines and habits, things of that nature. When I don't utilize that time, then I'm looking at the end of the day and I'm like, oh shoot, I had all this stuff I was supposed to do. And here I am trying to like crunch it. And sometimes crunching it can affect you on a much bigger level without knowing it. So it's finding your groove or finding your way that works for you as a person. So I've had these earbuds now probably a month, if not longer. Right? We might be teetering a month, because I want to say I bought them at the end. Let's see, the first was on. I want to say it was like right around the end of the new year. Matter of fact, actually, you know what? Not the new. It was the end of December, so it was like either the 30th or the 31st. And the only reason I remember was because I went and I ordered them, picked them up, and after I left there, I went to it's like a World of Beer craft place. It was my first. I've drove by it. I've been in that area multiple times, but never actually stopped. So I was like, let me go in here and see what's going on. And it was good to just kind of go in there and get something to eat, kind of lounge out a little bit. And then afterward, I went to Barnes and Noble. I'm sharing all of this because I was able to use the earbuds in the last two settings just to kind of get a feel for how they sound, how they play, things of that nature. And I'm kind of telling the story a little backwards, but it comes together. The earbuds I ordered them from Walmart. When they arrived, I said, okay, these are pretty nice. Not gonna lie. The first thing that popped up in my head, because it's me being me and I'm sitting here looking for them, forgot I put them in an accessory that I'll get into in a second. I placed them in I was like, I need a case. I know me. Anytime I'm getting earbuds and it comes in these nice protective case for the earbuds to charge, I'm like, I need a case for the earbuds for that casing, because all it takes is just one little bump and then that's all she wrote. My friend used this term yesterday, and I'm gonna segue a little bit, but I'm gonna come back. My friend used this term yesterday, and she calls it what's known as a catch-all. And it's basically like a little area where it's like, okay, you got like pens, you got pencils, you may have like keys, things like that, and just putting it in those little areas. And I got my first quote unquote catch-all for the first time, which is it's a dish. It probably is the size of looks like a small plate, but inside the plate it says the word keys. And what's good about it is I put my keys in it, my wallet in it, and my earbuds. So I know, like, if I'm leaving for the day or if I have to go do anything, I know to pick it up, and I got that out the way. I'm sharing that because like it came with like a little small lanyard that you can wear on your wrist. So if you're like, oh, I need to make sure I keep my keys nearby, you got that little hook, you're good to go. Bringing it back to the earbuds, I sit the Beats Studios in that container. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the obvious out of the way. They are not as quote unquote noise canceling as people would like them to be. I'm personally not it's personally not a big deal breaker to me, only because I would rather have earbuds that can still give me the functionality to hear what's going on around me, but also gives me the ability to listen to music and enjoy my unplug or separation. So that's one feature or one factor that I can go into about those right offhand. The second part of it is I was looking at those, and I looked at the Fit that has like the little wing for it where it'll sit in your ear. I don't think there's really a big difference between the two other than the battery life. And even the battery life isn't like the tell-all be-all or the end of the world. So I don't have like that angst against the battery piece. Because I've used them. I've been on calls with them. I've played music while wearing them, the whole nine. And I can personally say it works for what I need it to work for. Sound quality is pretty good. It's not anything like, it's not bass heavy. I mean, I know Beats are always known for being bass heavy, but for the size and the form factor of the earbud, they have held up pretty well. I think the biggest question mark, or the biggest, like, I won't even say con, but the adjustment with using them is because of the size of the earbud and because of how quick you may have to charge the earbuds back up. If you're using them for a good period of time and then placing them back in the case, you can probably go through a good charge for about 3 days. And what I have done, which I've been telling people about this for years, I was the OG with power banks, And when I say OG power banks, I mean your traditional power bank that had just a basic USB A, and it gives you the ability to plug just about anything in. Well, I would say probably in 2021 and definitely in 2022, I found that USB-C to whatever is the more convenient route. So I have more USB-C to USB-C cables, USB-C to USB-C lightning cables. I keep those with me all the time because you just never know. And the reason I'm saying that is because I went and got, and I want to say this was in either October or November. I went out and purchased, actually, no, it was in October. I went out and got a Basis power bank. And I probably have talked about it before, but I will tell, so it's a Basis power bank it's MagSafe. So it's meant for any of your iPhone devices, any of your newer iPhones. So the 12, I want to say the 11, the 12, the 13, and the 14. You can pretty much snap this on the back and it will charge your phone. But why I use it and why I like it is because it also has the functionality where if you just plug in anything directly to it, it will charge it at a high charge wattage. I know that wasn't the tech talk you were looking for, but the reason I say that is because if I have this with me and I need to charge my if the Beats are low, I will just hook it on here, get a nice charge, and it's good to go. This, I want to say it was about $30 or $40, but in my personal opinion, it's a worthwhile investment for the power bank. It's 10,000 milliamps. So unless you're using it for like your iPad or your phone, it will charge. You'll get a good amount of charges out of it before you need to recharge it. I have probably, since owning it, I might have recharged it like 3 or 4 times total since October, just to give you an idea. Also, and I've promoted them, but I don't promote them enough. Casely has their power bank. It's like a 5,000. Not a bad option either. If you can go on their site and find them when they're on sale, get one. I would tell him, I would easily just get one. So, all that being said, the Beats Power Beats are a good pair. Or the Beats Studio Buds are a nice. The Beats Studio Buds are a nice pair. What's going to run a lot of people away is because they sit in your ear, but a lot of times most people are traditionally accustomed to having the hook so that they don't lose the earbuds, and I 100% understand that. What I've suggested, even with someone saying this to me the other day, is if you're using them, to make sure you find which ear gel fits for your ear, and then testing it and saying, okay, this can fit. If I do you don't need to do a shake like you having a seizure. Just shake your head a little bit and just see if they come out. If they don't budge or they don't move, that's the set you should use. I tested each set, and I found that the smaller ones work for my ear, because the other ones, if I put either one of them in, they won't. It doesn't even remotely sit. So that's my overall review. I'm not going to give it like a rating, but I will say they're good to use. And I think the biggest reason I like them, and this is probably like Studio or Beats didn't intend to do this, but it was kind of what worked for me. The fits come in nice colors. I do like the color schemes for all of the fits. I even like what Kim Kardashian did with her color schemes, as far as for the I don't want to say naked, but for the color tones of the skin, to match skin tones for black men and women, because men and women could use them. But they didn't have a cut, and it's a minor thing, but it's a personal thing with me where they didn't have them in red. So I was like, I would rather have like a red one. So when I didn't see that, I was like, not really compelled to it, but it's a nice thing to see. And when I saw the Studio Buds, they had those in red, so I was like, yeah, gotta hop on it. Not even up for debate. So that's how I've kind of like grown attached to that set of earbuds. And of course, the case that I got for it was red too, so it blends in even better. So yeah, that's that on that. not gonna go too in depth with this, but January reflection. January reflection. I'm not gonna. Normally, I would do questions and give answers to everything, but I'll give kind of like just a personal overall reflection or discussion about January. January showed me that there's a lot of room for improvement, and what I mean by that is there are a lot of things that I was doing right, but there are a lot of things that I need to still get in a better habit and better routine of. One of those things, obviously, is me turning to my right and looking right at the book. Is doing more reading. Second, and kind of a close second, but not by much, is doing more journaling. I journaled pretty good as far as like my actual daily journaling, writing out thoughts. I've been doing the morning pages journaling method, trying that out. Was trying to get nearly 3 pages of journaling done. Some days it gets done. Some days it's like, I ain't really got that much to say on that level, but it is what it is. And I still have been doing bullet journaling. The bullet journaling has been eye opening. I took notes for certification, which I need to talk about that. I just realized, but I did notes for a certification that I'm taking. And in the process of doing the notes, I was like, all right, I'm covering like quite a few pages. Maybe I should take it out of this book and get its own personal notebook, which it's a pretty hefty notebook, but I think the size notebook that I have would work for what I'm trying to do. So hopefully that will be helpful, because I do want to take that exam. And if you're wondering, it is the ITIL 4 Foundation, which is basically information technology, innovative. I'm probably messing up that abbreviation, but I don't think it's innovative. It is, hold on a sec, because I don't like to not know what I'm talking about. It is Information Technology Infrastructure Library. So I was way off. But yeah, the Infrastructure Library of IT, and knowing where everything goes, how it's all broken down, kind of like the ins and outs of it, which is a certification that's a pretty big deal. And studied for that, started studying. Spent a good amount of last week. We'll be doing the same this week. Actually, we'll probably start doing that once we end this podcast. And that's been going pretty good, not gonna lie. MagFest was a go. It was like a double up in enjoyment of celebrating MagFest with the crew, as well as hanging out for Mark's birthday with the crew, and possibility we might be getting his girl to join us for the events, festivities next year. And it's interesting because I definitely do want to go next year, because I think I'm getting to that point where it's like I'm enjoying it, but I'm also like, all right, I gotta buckle down. And it's incentive, because I think now with me knowing what I'm trying to work on business wise and personal wise, I need to make this, like, I gotta give it my best effort. So, and that's going back to the perfectionism part with the graphic and web design. But yeah, so reading more, writing a lot more, being more intentional, finding spaces. I'm learning to utilize productive spaces more frequently. And to add to that, I've accepted that, and this is strange, but it's working for me. Morning sessions at Starbucks, even though I'm not really big on trying to do the Starbucks like consumption part, but I still will get something while I'm there. But between doing that and also seeing other people, being around other people, doing what I consider as my version of body doubling, has been very helpful to being more productive and being more aware of what I need to get taken care of. So that's kind of my overall January adjustment or reflection. Still got a ways to go, of course, but I'm not beating myself up for what I haven't gotten done. I'm just aware of what has been done and where there's room for growth, like we always should be trying to do. The message I'm going to pass along is, and this is kind of a two-parter, but it's not. It is called, the term I put was lane adjustment. We always hear the age-old phrase and the age-old term, and warning, this will kind of be story time, but not really. We always hear the age-old phrase and the age-old term of stay in your lane. Stay in your lane has an asterisk to that that's very key. we sometimes bring people in our lanes or bring people in our lives for things that we need to deal with internally. And we don't realize or don't understand the extent or the magnitude of that because we're so pressed to get an opinion or get input where it's not necessary. My parents have been married for a good amount of time. Anything that they've dealt with. And I have the utmost respect for that because that is the way that it should be with most people. But a lot of times it doesn't work that way. So, when you get to that point and realizing like, okay, we need to really be in tune with who we are and what we do. Sorry, I looked at something and I messed with something that I had no business messing with, and I'm hoping I didn't mess up my audio doing this, but we'll see in a second. Basically, just we need to sometimes mind our own business and focus on what we need to for ourselves instead of trying to figure out what everyone else is or isn't doing. Because when in doing that, it can blow up right in your face without you without trying. Okay, that looks way more better. I was like super concerned. I was like, I think I messed up my podcast. Like I looked and I was like, this is not how my audio should look right now. All right, that's way better. My bad. Life of an editor. If you know, you know. But I will say there are going to be times that you have to adjust lanes and you have to switch and figure out what you're trying to do. And you're going to have people that's going to tell you you shouldn't do this. You'll have everybody giving their opinion and their input. You're going to get a lot of productive input and you're going to get a lot of triggering input. And you're going to get a lot of people that just don't want to see you succeed because they're not succeeding. Or you're going to have a lot of people that are just naturally pessimistic. And that's cool too. But if you're trying to run your race and you're trying to get what you need to get done, you're going to do it and try to do it to the best of your ability. People are going to give their thoughts. Everyone's entitled to their thoughts and their opinions and their feelings. But if you're holding on and latching to what they're saying as gold, it can generate a massive, and I mean massive, burnout. So be aware of that today. Be understanding of it. You know, we hear this phrase a lot, and this might be an add-on. A lot of times the word or the phrase, be kind to yourself or be patient with yourself, gets floated around so frequently, but we really don't take time to understand what that means or how that works. And sometimes we really do need to take time and just like look at ourselves and say, hey, I'm doing a good job. I'm actually not as bad. Things aren't as bad as I think they are. If we see them as bad, then we're generating them as being bad. But if things are working out okay and you see light, no pun intended, as I look outside, it's nice and sunny. And if you see light, it's like, hey, I'm something is being accomplished. Like, let me give myself gratitude or give myself kindness for that accomplishment. Because not everyone takes that time to be aware of that or be cognizant or be present in that moment. So don't take, we always joke and hear people say, don't take my kindness for weakness. But the reality is, don't lower your kindness because of the weakness of others. Do with that as you will. On that note, this is The Pass. This is yet another episode 363. BT signing out, and I will catch y'all on the next episode. Another episode is completed. Thank you all for listening. If you want to check out the podcast, you can go to buzzsprout.com. If you're looking to do podcasts, you can go to buzzsprout.com. To get to my podcast, you'll go to thepastbtpod.buzzsprout.com. If you're looking at getting a microphone, I always suggest getting the Blue Yeti X. That is the microphone that I use. If you're starting off and you need something more affordable, Samson Meteor, it's a worthwhile investment. And there are other microphones that are going to be simple enough. My big suggestion I tell everyone whenever looking for a microphone, be sure that your microphone has the ability to have you listen to your audio or listen to yourself as you're talking. It will make a big difference in your editing in your podcast. Also, most importantly, and I tell people this is a tip offline, but I'm giving this in the final listen or at the end of the show. Drink water while recording, and also just drink water in general. But drink water while you're recording, and the reason why, you'll be surprised. All right. See y'all on the next show.